She live-staged our breakup for views. My 12-word reply made the crowd disappear. She pointed the camera and said, "Tell them why you're leaving." The light bar threw a blue smear across my reflection in her monitor, and the chat flew past like hailstones. YE/IS, he cheating / this is wild / drop him / LMAO. I'm Alex, 28, sound designer, usually paid to erase noise. Tonight, I was the noise. I keep people's audiobooks intimate, podcasts clean, small films human. Privacy is how I eat. Every mic I touch has a consent form attached. Every take is negotiated. Every layer is chosen because the person breathing on the other side of the diaphragm said yes. I live on NDAs and the soft power of respect. And Mia, my girlfriend, was live, marketable, radiant, and holding my life up to the ring light like a specimen. "Babe," she said, microphone inches from my chin, "be honest with them." The lens lived between us like a third person with rent money. She angled me toward the neon shelf where sponsorship boxes glowed in pastel rose, collagen chews, sleep gummies, a brand that mailed us matching pajamas after she posted a Sunday reset. She had titled this stream, "Breaking, He's Not Who You Think." 10,000 viewers, 20,000, the counter pulsing. Comments demanded proof, and I felt my throat tighten around the idea that proof is never neutral when someone monetizes the frame. If I said nothing, I became the villain edited in later. If I argued, I became the villain in real time. My mother texted, "Call me now." My client texted, "Any delays on the trailer mix?" My name trended on her mod dashboard like a stock chart in a storm. Mia's eyes were wet from the angles that made them wet, and her pinky brushed my wrist, and she whispered, just loud enough for the mic, "Don't make this worse." I stared at the camera's iris and saw a hole that wanted me. I imagined the moment framed into a thumbnail. My jaw clenched, hers noble, a caption promising healing. What I stood to lose if I played along wasn't only dignity. It was contracts, addresses, safety. Last week a guy had waited outside our door and said he loved the way I breathe when I'm off camera. He'd waved a phone. It's love when you watch in silence. I swallowed and thought, I need one line that ends this before it eats me. And then the chat broke into a chant that sounded like a countdown toward detonation. Mia and I met under softer light, when my world was faders and her world was daylight. I'd finished a 12-hour cleanup on a doc about hospice volunteers, the kind that sticks to your hands, and she posted a video about affordable Lux candles that somehow paid our rent that month. She DM'd me after I commented on the buzz in her audio. "You can hear my neighbor's air conditioner? Huh," she wrote. I fixed 2 minutes for free. She delivered gratitude at 60 frames per second. We started with coffee, graduated to thrift store hunts, and moved in when the lease math looked kinder to 2 than 1. Her early boundaries were surprisingly clear. No filming in the bedroom. No filming anyone without permission. No hate bait. I proposed a pact. I would never sample her voice for work. She would never sample my life for content. When the first brand box arrived, we laughed at the tissue paper like misdelivered confetti. She unboxed moisturizer. I measured room tone and stayed off camera. The drift started as a joke. "I'll tag your studio if you tag my sunrise." Then a clip of my hands setting up acoustic panels. No face, just the motion. Tagged boyfriend's weird cave. It hit 1 million. The next week she posted a video, supposedly random, in front of the lobby mailboxes, and my work address flashed on an envelope. I messaged, panicked. She deleted it, apologized, cried, promised. 2 days later, someone sent me a pizza with a note that read, "Breathe for me." She filmed recipes. I made late-night mixes. We took rooftop walks where the wind ate our arguments. But attention is gravity with a marketing budget. She said, "It's not that deep," when I asked her to blur a photo that showed my client's laptop make and model. She said, "I get it," as her thumb hovered over the upload button like a divining rod. The first brand dinner felt like a test I hadn't studied for. A manager asked, "What's your angle?" And I said, "I make people inaudible when they don't consent to be heard." He laughed too hard. Mia squeezed my knee. In the ride home, she said, "They think you're mysterious." I said, "I'm private." She said, "Same thing, but theirs has merch." Then she went live from our couch and, smiling, jokingly pinned my studio's door code in the chat. The comments begged for the code again, like dogs scenting blood. After the door code stunt, I told myself it was panic theater and she would walk it back. She went live that night to clarify. Eyes glossy, voice an octave softer, and said she had misread the room, and my partner values privacy. The apology racked up more views than the video where she cooked a steak in a waffle iron. DMs doubled. A guy in a varsity jacket waited by the mailbox and asked me to sign his phone case like I'd scored on his team. He said, the bit was hilarious, and I said, it wasn't a bit. He grinned like the sun had an hourly quota. The first planted stranger came 2 days later at a cafe where we spent Saturdays. He recognized her with textbook astonishment, then angled his camera to catch me in profile. Dude, you're a legend, he said, for putting up with all that. His friend snorted like a cue. They left after getting the shot. Mia leaned across her latte and mouthed. See? Brand safety. I asked, how is this safe? She whispered, they'll love you, and love protects. I started noticing scripts. A random commenter with the same punctuation as her mod welcomed new chatters with identical phrasing every time. Her impromptu dances hit exactly 15, 30, 45 seconds, like a metronome strapped to the algorithm's ankle. A community post asked, do you believe in private partners? With 2 answers, support me, or sorry, King. Jay, one of her mods, DM'd me from a burner and said, you're not imagining it. It's a content calendar mapped to human nerves. At night, I lay on the studio floor and let the bass traps hold me like foam teeth. I counted breath, not sheep. I thought about the hospice doc and a woman named Nora who asked me to cut the oxygen hiss so her husband's last word, hey, would sound like itself. Sound is trust. I kept repeating, sound is permission. I told Mia again I needed a firewall between us and her audience. She kissed me, said, you need to feel chosen, and posted a poll titled, should we do a couples Q&A? The random fan apologized twice, then whispered, see you at Thursday's reveal. Mia titled the next stream, Kitchen Truths, and I became a garnish. She handed me a spoon like a microphone and told me to stir and share. The chat spammed hearts for Alex, and then pivoted to does he even work, though? She laughed in a way that invited me to be a good sport. I gave the pod a lazy circle and said I'd just finished cleaning clicks from a poet's breath, which is delicate but fulfilling. A poet, she repeated, bright as tinfoil. So not exactly saving lives, huh? The clip was edited later into a reel where my blink looked like contempt. The talent manager's email arrived an hour after the stream ended. We see narrative energy here. Shattering reveal arc could land significant CPM. The words sat in my inbox like teeth. Mia said I was being dramatic when I read it out loud. They're just excited, she said. And excitement buys groceries. She set her phone on the counter, lens grazing the knife block like a dare. That night a process server rang our bell and asked for Mia by her legal name. Content usage dispute, he said. She filmed his shoes as he left. We don't claim. She chirped to the camera. We create. I closed the door and said, we need to stop going live for a while. She said, we need to control the story. The soundproofing in my loft felt thinner, like the foam had learned to gossip. The edit that cut me to ribbons went up the following morning. 3 seconds of my face paused mid-blink, 6 seconds of her saying, he thinks he's better than our community, and a thumbnail that cropped my mouth into a sneer. My client emailed, concerned about associations. The comments rehearsed anger like choir practice. Mrs. Guzman knocked that evening to ask why strangers were photographing the hallway. Tripods, she said, like little spiders. I called Jay, who answered in a whisper from the co-working space. She's scheduling a breakup week, they said, and there are doc templates for the thumbnails already. I asked how they knew. They said, because I'm the one asked to color code the panic. Jay said they were done enabling, but didn't know how to step off a runaway float without getting crushed by confetti. I walked back into the living room and saw 2 hidden cameras. By morning, the hallway had a nervous system. Tripods sprouted and light stands flashed in the elevator door. Mrs. Guzman cornered me by the mailboxes holding a notice from the city. Complaints about obstructive filming. You too famous? She asked. Just loud, I said. She tapped the paper. Loud costs money. Jay messaged, we need to talk IRL. We met at a noodle shop 10 blocks away where the cook knew our orders. Put up, Jay slid a phone across. screenshots of a Trello board labeled Breakup Week with colored labels and phases. She's seeding a narrative, Jay said, spoon clinking. The plants are paid in merch and shoutouts. There's even a doc for good angles of your hurt. The room tilted, and broth sloshed like a tide. At home, Mia had turned the living room into a pastel war room. It's not that big a deal, she said without looking up. It's like reality TV, just smarter. I said, reality TV has contracts. She said, so does love. She lifted her camera and asked me to say 3 things I loved about her into the lens, then asked again, slower. I said them to the wall. I told her I wasn't participating in any more spontaneous content. She said spontaneous, with air quotes you could climb through. If you don't show up, she said, they'll think you're hiding something. I said, I am my life. Mrs. Guzman called from the hall to say a delivery guy was asking for autographs. Mia opened the door and waved to the camera in his chest pocket. The invite had 15 collaborators, several with burner addresses echoing her brand. The notes field read, crowd prompts, ask about transparency, ask if he's controlling, chant we love you if he pauses. A line item, $3, 500, said venue deposit recovered via live sales. Attached, a sponsorship pre-invoice for a seltzer requesting tearful authenticity beside its logo. Are you serious? I asked. Mia didn't glance up. We're curating catharsis, she said. It's generous. I pictured my client's contracts, my lease, my mother's health insurance mail spread on our kitchen table. I pictured strangers knowing the shape of my door. Then Jay texted, check the calendar invite titled Thursday pop-up, surprise reveal. The location pin hovered over our building like a siren asleep. I opened her laptop and found the content calendar like a stage manager's Bible. Color blocks, hooks, beats, call to action phrasing. A folder labeled BKUP Real Assets held thumbnail drafts where my face looked like a storm cloud you'd click to watch wreck a farm. Another folder, plants. Inside, PDFs titled crowd_prompts_v3 and mic_final. The metadata said last edit 2:14 universal time coordinated by a user with her brand name plus 2 extra letters. Exactly the suffix I'd seen on a mod account that always materialized when the chat soured. Next to the files, an invoice draft for Apology Tour Bundle, net 30, with a clause about tears not guaranteed but encouraged. In the sink, our dishes congealed into a still life. Lipstick rim on a mason jar, ladle crusted with something green. She came in humming and asked if I'd seen the cute venue. I said, cute like a trap. She said, cute like community. I asked why the location pin hovered over our building. She said, because surprise feels real. I said, real requires consent. She touched my cheek like a button that should change me. Jay and I built a timeline. We lined up Mia's spontaneous posts with their internal drafts using EXIF timestamps and a habit of hers, naming files with month day hour like 1004 to 1930, then forgetting to update overlays. We cross-referenced a hallway cam Mrs. Guzman had installed to catch package thieves. Legal, posted notice, with the time her neighbor confrontation clip aired. The hallway was empty when she said someone threatened her. The post got 2 million views. At 3:11, a voice memo in her notes app. Remember, cry on cue when brand logo lower third appears. Ask chat. What would you do if your partner hid from you? The memo's waveform looked like a rehearsal of grief. I copied the file to a hard drive labeled winner_mixes and set a password I could remember by rhythm. I slept 3 hours and woke to the sound of the elevator ding, counting like a metronome. Mia's voice traveled under the door. Thursday, we take back my narrative. Jay texted, don't fight a spectacle with more spectacle. Fight with an off switch. I replied, there's a 12-word breaker I can drop, but it has to be surgical. Jay wrote back, you'll get one shot before the chant eats oxygen. My hands shook like the room had wires. I wrote the line down, then tore the paper, then wrote it again. The breadcrumb trail led outward, co-working desks, brand spreadsheets, a Telegram chat called Farm Love Season 3, with 300 lurkers and 6 loud voices. I wasn't invited, but links leak. Jay screenshotted, cropping names. Inside, Ahmad asked if Tears ETA was still 8:25 to 8:40 window because the sponsor wanted peak dwell time. Someone else shared a doc titled Crisis KPIs, and I stared at the bullet points like a therapist reading a heist plan. Retention, watch time, conversion, parasocial depth. A line at the bottom read, "Don't let him control the frame." I walked the block to breathe and counted cameras in windows like birders count sparrows. 2 kids practiced pointing microphones at each other and laughing. A man in a beanie asked if I'd sign his hoodie so he could flip it later. The city sounded like open tabs. I texted my mother, "Taking a break from socials, love you." She replied with a sun emoji and a story about her basil plant refusing to die. Basil, unlike narratives, doesn't need outrage to live. Back home, I cross-checked Mia's brand pipeline, a Notion page with neat columns, deliverable, hook, date, risk, and a row labeled Breakup Week, Part 3, Live at Pop-Up Surprise. Under risk, she'd written, "Alex may refuse, prep plants." Under deliverable, tears plus apology plus seltzer mention. Fees, a number that could replace our fridge and my headphones in one swipe. I recorded a voice memo to myself because sound steadies me. Speak slowly. No names. No diagnoses. No insults. Name mechanisms, not villains. Kill the air supply, not the person breathing it. I practiced the 12-word line under my breath until it fattened with meaning and fear. At 1942, a new upload. Mia in soft light saying she'd tried everything and didn't want to make this public but needed safety. My phone pinged with classmates from middle school asking if I was okay. The comments begged for the truth, identical phrasing from accounts that had joined the same week. Mrs. Guzman slid an envelope under the door, a copy of the building's policy on commercial shoots, and a note in her careful script. "You can use the camera recordings if you need to show time and date." The city had given her a badge. The hallway had become evidence. Outside, a truck unloaded folding chairs like a portable courtroom, setting its own laws. Here's what I discovered. Plain and boring like receipts nailed to a board. The pop-up space had been rented 2 weeks before the surprise event. The contract requested discreet placement of audience plants near aisle mics. A supplier invoice billed for Cry-Safe mascara testers, in bulk, shipped to address our building. A PDF proposed post-breakup redemption arc, pre-sold to a podcast tour, with me listed as unavailable/antagonist, a role that improves narrative efficiency. The random fan, who praised my patience at the cafe, he'd uploaded a reel wearing Mia's merch 6 months ago and had a discount code embedded in his bio. What I still didn't know was the why now. The money was good before. The arcs were smooth enough. Why escalate to a live ambush? Jay's theory, algorithmic decay. Every channel routes eventually to confession or crime. Another theory, control tastes like sugar until it tastes like blood. A third, a sponsor wanted a seasonal spike, and heartbreak is evergreen. Stakes, quantified. My current contracts had morals and distraction clauses. If I appeared in a scandal or created perceived hostility, they could terminate. If my studio address stayed in circulation, a client with privacy obligations might leave. The lease required no large gatherings and no filming in common areas without approval. Violate, lose home. And safety? A DM that morning included a map pin and the words, "Come outside, King. Cameras off. Let's talk hearts." I printed the hallway timestamps and taped them on the wall next to the pop-up contract and Mia's content calendar. Lines connected like strings in a detective show, which I hate because real life doesn't resolve in symmetries. Jay came over with hummus and said, "We're going to war with boredom." We rehearsed the plan. I would accept the mic, say the 12 words, then present neutral receipts, dates, docs, public links. No private docs, no slurs, no medical guesses. The goal wasn't victory, it was evacuation. At midnight, Mia tiptoed past the studio and filmed herself crying in the bathroom with the faucet on. The waveform told me everything. The tap drowned the breaths she didn't want transcribed. I lay awake listening to plumbing like it could warn me. The pop-up doors would open at 7 p.m. and the plants would line the aisles. The morning of, I packed a go bag like a person leaving a flood, drives labeled in pencil, passport, hoodie with no logos. I saved the receipts to a folder named Public Only, then printed a single sheet with a QR code that linked to it. On the paper, I wrote a note. Neutral evidence. No faces. Jay handed me a second sheet, platform policy excerpts with phrases highlighted, manipulated media, harmful deception, coordinated inauthentic behavior. Attorney Patel, recommended by a podcast host who likes me, called between clients and said, facts, not vibes. Harm, not hurt. Policy, not punishment. At 13:10, Mia posted a gratitude clip, lip trembling, thanking her community for holding space. A brand replied with heart emojis, then DM'd me through my work email asking if I'd be open to a narrative collab to reshape the convo. I didn't answer. My mother texted another basil update like a lifeline. It's flowering. We walked to the venue at 18:30. Outside, a line curled like a dragon's tail. People wore her merch, and some wore neutral clothing like good jurors. Inside, the stage was dressed in soft colors. The lower third on the projection screen rotated sponsor logos in a slow carousel. A sound tech handed me a lav like we were colleagues. I asked for a handheld instead, something I could set down and thereby end. He shrugged, professional boredom blessing me. I found the aisle mics, one left, one right. Plants stood nearby, eyes bright with the warmth of being chosen. Jay hovered near the back with a hoodie and a laptop for contingencies that would never arrive, because our plan required radical restraint. At 19:08, Mia entered to applause, cheeks lit like confession is a sunrise. She told a story of trying and being pushed away. She paused at edges designed for "We love you," and the aisle answered on cue. She looked at me with those eyes she can switch on like lamps, and she said, "Alex, please, speak your truth." I stood, not to perform, but to exit. The handheld mic felt heavier than a violin case. Mia's team had dimmed the house lights just enough to spotlight glisten on her cheekbones. The chat on the projected side screen scrolled with emotes and guesses and demands, hungry as wet fire. I could have explained everything, but explanations are oxygen to machines like this. I could have accused her, but accusations make better clips than truth. Jay caught my eye and pinched their fingers close like turn the gain down. I started by breathing into the mic so the room heard 1, 2, 3, clean inhales, sound people's handshake. I'm a sound designer, I said, which means I notice how things are made. A murmur. Tonight's program is well made. Laughter, confusion, relief that I was playing nice. There are many ways to be with someone, I continued, and some require cameras. A plant raised her hand right on cue. I ignored the aisle. Before I say my one line, I said, I'm going to say what it is not. It is not an insult. It is not a diagnosis. It is not a legal threat. It is not a plea. It is a description of a machine. The projector flickered. Someone backstage thought they'd lost me. They hadn't. I held the mic down by my chest so the crowd wouldn't hear my heart hitting it. I looked at Mia the way you look at a friend who dropped their keys down a storm drain and insists the solution is to widen the drain. She stepped closer and whispered, just for me, don't nuke us. The lav on her collar caught it anyway. The house heard. A hiss moved through the room like a snake realizing it was a rope. I raised the mic, kept my voice level, and put 12 words on a single line where they couldn't be cut without bleeding meaning. If cameras stop, your love stops. That's not love, it's labor metrics. The sentence landed like a soft thing you'd think wouldn't break anything, and then everyone realized it was made of tungsten. The chat slowed, then spasmed, then spat nothing useful. You can't emote a confession that isn't about sin, only systems. Mia blinked, calculating routes the line might take. Plants glanced at each other, unsure where the chant fit. The sponsor carousel rotated, then hesitated, then froze like it had heard a new word and wanted to learn it before proceeding. I didn't add a flourish. I didn't add a story. I held silence like a lens cap. Then I set the mic on the stage, the sound of plastic onward echoing like a stamp, and walked to the projector input. I plugged in a thumb drive and tapped the spacebar. On screen, a calm title card, neutral receipts, then a time-stamped hallway cam clip of empty carpet during Mia's claimed confrontation. Next slide. Venue contract excerpt showing the plant clause. Next, sponsorship pre-invoice requesting tearful authenticity. A QR code for public-only files glowed in the corner. I said, no names, no addresses, no diagnoses, just dates and deliverables. The room adjusted like an ear equalizing pressure. A man near the back stood, then sat, like a puppet whose strings had been cut and reattached mid-thought. Jay texted, breathe. I did, loudly enough to feed the room's mammal brain that everything was, at minimum, survivable. Mia reached for the mic I'd set down. It made a small feedback squeal, the kind that wakes babies and breaks spells. She said, "We all tell stories," and waited for cheers that didn't arrive. The aisle mics remained and used like ceremonial swords no one wanted to lift. Silence is the rarest crowd behavior, and it came like rain on a drought day. First a deep quiet, then the shuffling quiet of people figuring out how to leave without being content. The sponsor logo carousel restarted, then vanished to a default screensaver because nobody backstage wanted to look like they were still selling something during a decomposition. A mod typed kindness only, and then stopped typing anything at all. Another mod wrote, context incoming, then went offline. If attention is a cathedral, this was the sound of doors opening to the street. I clicked through slides. The calendar labeled Breakup Week with its cryon Q note, the plant PDF with chant "We love you" if he pauses, the public policy snippets highlighting coordinated inauthentic behavior. I kept it neutral. I didn't say Mia's name. I didn't point. I didn't invite pile-ons. I turned evidence into boredom, and boredom turns clout into compost. Someone in the second row asked, unprompted, "Is this illegal?" And I said, "Often not, frequently harmful." A woman near the aisle whispered, "I have a daughter," and I let the sentence hang because completing it would be my theft. Mia stood very still, then moved into motion like a person remembering choreography. "We're all learning," she said to the camera that was still live though fewer watched. "We are imperfect." It was the correct sentence for every wrong moment. Backstage, a producer called someone to regroup. Jay sent me a screenshot. A sponsor DM pausing campaigns, pending internal review. Another message, platform trust and safety requesting context. Attorney Patel texted, "You're doing the thing. Keep it factual." I nodded to nobody. I ended the slideshow on a blank screen and said, "I'm going home. No drama, no door slam. The link will stay up for a week. Then I'm done." I picked up my bag and the thumb drive. People parted like a school of fish reversing, polite, sheepish, relieved at a door they could choose. Behind me, Mia whispered into the mic, "Babe, don't leave me like this." And the room finally exhaled. Fallout moves slower than rage, but hits harder. The next morning, platform policy emailed asking for the files. I sent only what was already public. A brand paused a spring campaign with Mia, citing concerns about staged harm. Another doubled down with a statement about artistic expression, then turned off comments. Mia posted a video about online abuse, using screenshots of criticisms that were real but from accounts I didn't recognize. Someone doxed Jay. "We spent the afternoon on the phone with their ISP and a friend who knows how to wash the web with clean information." I filed a change of address request and moved the studio to a room across town with no exterior windows. I lost 2 clients who didn't want heat, then gained one who said, "We're old school. We like adults." My rent came due with an asterisk. The building fined us for filming in common areas, which I paid because punishment keeps books incorrectly but receipts do not. Mrs. Guzman found me in the laundry room and handed me a bag of homemade cookies and a copy of the new lobby policy drafted in plain Spanish and English. "No tripods without a permit," she said, and smiled like a sheriff. Mia texted a page of blue bubbles ranging from sorry to savage. She said I'd humiliated her. I said I'd ended a spectacle. She said I'd ruined her income. I said I'd stopped our home from becoming a set. She offered to go live together and rebuild. I said we could talk off camera with a mediator. She replied with a screenshot of a calendar invite labeled mediation livestream. I declined and sent her the name of Attorney Patel. Jay's DMs were a triage ward. Mods stepping down, kids asking if parasocial is a slur, brand interns begging for a crisis doc. We sent them a one-liner, "Let bored things be boring," and turned off our phones. That night, I walked the block without flinching at each phone lifted, a victory measured in how many muscles don't clench. Then a knock came at midnight, and the peephole showed a lens reflecting my own eye. I didn't open. I texted building security, then sat on the floor and listened to the visitor argue with themselves in whispers. "He'll open for love. Then, he owes a statement." Footsteps retreated. I exhaled, counted, drank water. In the morning, I booked therapy with the clinic that helped the hospice crew process our project. Grief work applies to attention funerals too. The therapist said, "Your nervous system learned you're content. Teach it you're a person." Homework: 20 minutes of silence daily without podcasts or texts. The first day, I lasted 4. Attorney Patel drew a boundary doc, dull and beautiful. What I could share, what I wouldn't, what I'd return, what I refused, my likeness in her merch, my name in her titles. Mia's lawyer agreed to a mutual non-disparagement, but pushed for collab exception. We crossed it out. I returned gifts addressed to both of us, included a photocopy of the return labels, and kept receipts like rosary beads. I sent rent proof covering my half through the month I left. I didn't ghost her fans, I ghosted the machine. Jay and I wiped our footprints where we could, deleted old mutual posts, scrubbed a stray tag that mapped my running route. We updated passwords to 12 words long so they felt as stubborn as my sentence. We put parental controls on our own devices because the parent we needed was the one who says, "Bedtime." At night, I read a book about birds and learned that some chicks imprint on the first moving thing they see. I underlined, "Attention bonds need guarding." Weeks put compost on the story. Mia posted a soft pivot, healing, boundaries, community care, then a harder pivot to travel vlogs and product reviews far from home. Her views dipped, rose, plateaued. My work calendar filled with clients who whispered, "We want to be left alone," like a wish they had permission to make. One evening, Mrs. Guzman saw me on the stairs and asked, "You okay now?" I said, "Quieter," and she said, "Quiet is a good neighbor." Then a new platform policy draft leaked into my inbox with my line paraphrased as a heading. The draft read like a machine learning to say sorry. Creators must obtain clear consent for staged conflict. Undisclosed audience manipulation may result in penalties. It wasn't mine. It wasn't hers. It was something a bureaucracy wrote after looking at too many broken cups and deciding to regulate tables. I forwarded it to Attorney Patel, who said, "Policy follows pain," and to Jay, who replied with a gif of a switch flipped down. We hiked the hill behind the warehouse and listened to actual wind, not the HVAC hum I'd trained my ears to ignore. A hawk circled. A kid below yelled to someone who could hear him and not 1,000 who couldn't. I rebuilt routines like a person picking through a beach after a storm. Sweep, listen, label, rest. I made tea without tweeting it. I engineered a singer's record whose liner notes thanked silence. I emailed a client who'd left and wrote, "No hard feelings." They returned in a month with work that fit my hands. I taped my 12-word sentence to the inside of my gear case where only I would see it. I didn't join panels. I didn't clap for schadenfreude. I watered a basil plant, and it lived. If you're watching this, I'm not asking you to pick a side. I'm asking you to notice machines, including the one inside that calls crowds care. If someone points a camera at your worst moment and calls it love, remember you can lower the gain. Name the mechanism. Refuse the part. End the episode. Here's the hopeful image. Jay teaching a community class on how to log off. Laptops closed. Kids laughing at how loud quiet feels. Here's the practical takeaway. Write your boundaries before someone else writes your arc, and then practice the sentence you'll need when the lens arrives. I believed attention would keep breaking doors. It didn't, once I stopped opening.